Donald Trump is stepping up his tariff war, hitting Canada and Mexico with new trade restrictions. People on both sides of the border are worried, businesses are feeling the pressure, and some experts are even warning about a recession. But what exactly are tariffs, and why do they have such a big impact on the economy? But first of all, what are tariffs? A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on foreign products or services. It therefore increases the prices of foreign products, making locally made products more attractive. This can be a measure to protect domestic industries, keeping jobs in the country. But of course, they can also create some tax revenue, and we all know that governments like that additional money. But of course, they also come with a lot of risks. That's actually why they are not so common anymore, but we'll talk about that later in the video. There are three types of tariffs. First of all, we get specific tariffs, and they are fixed fees on a particular product. You could, for example, say $5 per ton of lumber. Now, what's special about this is that it actually doesn't matter with this tariff how much the ton of lumber actually costs. The government doesn't go to every company and says, your lumber is a bit cheaper, so for you it's only $4. Or what would make even more sense, your lumber is so cheap, we'll make it $6 for you because that's hurting our homemade products. The second kind of tariffs are ad valorem tariffs, and they are probably the ones that you heard of in the news. So they are based on a percentage of a particular product's price. You could, for example, say a 10% tariff on imported cars. That means that the amount of the tariff is actually directly linked to the price of the product, unlike the specific tariffs. The third kind of tariffs are compound tariffs, and they are basically a combination of the first two tariffs. When we take a look into history, we can see that tariffs have been around for a long time. Even in ancient civilizations like ancient Greece, where they imposed tariffs on goods that were brought by merchants that were passing through their ports. Or the Roman Empire, that actually used tariffs on a larger scale to control trade. But the game totally changed in 16th to 18th century Europe with the mercantilist era, where countries like France tried to minimize imports while maximizing exports. But that wasn't just France. Britain, for example, imposed tariffs on foreign goods, additionally encouraging their colonies to only trade with them. And that was really just a measure to create even more dependencies. The process of tariffs becoming more and more insignificant due to free trade agreements had its beginning in the 20th century. Before that, something had to happen. The Big Clash, the Great Depression, and World War II. Unlike recent headlines could tell us, though, the Great Depression was not caused by tariffs. The often cited Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was actually enacted in 1930, while the Great Depression began in October 1929. But of course, it made the whole situation a lot worse. But as I said, after World War II, especially industrialized nations decreased tariffs, seeing that free trade can boost economic growth for everyone. But now, after taking a short look into history, let's now talk about the advantages and disadvantages of tariffs to understand why they have become more and more uncommon. First, let's talk about the advantages. And they are really just the two that we already talked about. It can create some revenue for the government, and as we said, we know the government likes that, and it can protect domestic industries. But here we have to be careful, because a common misconception is that when you impose tariffs, you can actually tax foreign companies in foreign countries. But that's just not true. You can only tax the domestic importer of these products. So while imposing tariffs on foreign goods, you're also risking domestic jobs and industries. And of course, the foreign manufacturer, the foreign company, can try to sell their products in other countries, unlike the domestic importers that rely on those products. And it's really obvious, just because you impose tariffs on foreign goods, it doesn't mean that your domestic manufacturers are just going to produce cheaper products for your people. If there is any change in pricing at all, the prices are probably going to increase because your local manufacturers are going to have less competition, and therefore they can increase the prices because they got less competition that could sell these products cheaper. And of course, if you still want to buy the products from abroad, or maybe, I don't know, you have to buy the products from abroad, then it's going to be a lot more expensive, because the only natural way to compensate these tariffs is passing on these increased costs to the consumers. The other disadvantage, potentially even being a dangerous downside, are trade wars. I mean, come on, let's face it. If one government imposes tariffs on foreign goods, the other government is going to react. Most of the times with tariffs themselves. We call them retaliatory tariffs because they are being imposed in response to other tariffs. This often results in an economic downward spiral because there's just no winner. For example, if the American government decides to impose tariffs on Canadian goods, they're also limiting their own trading opportunities. And additionally, if then the retaliatory tariffs are being exposed, then it gets even worse. Well, and some people might say, well, we are America and we got the strongest economy in the world. And if we have a trade war with Canada, then they're going to lose a hell lot more than we do. Yes, that might be true, but you're still going to lose, okay? So it's a lose-lose situation. And just because Canada is then losing something or Mexico is losing the trade war, you're still going to lose too, just a bit less than they are. And of course, a trade war also results in governments not working very well together in other aspects because the relations are just so strained. While some tariffs, very low in percentage and only on particular products, some very specific things like steel or oil, can be useful, they usually get useless and potentially even dangerous on a larger scale. Even though I'm not an expert on the economy, we should still talk about some scenarios. Are we gonna experience another Great Depression because of Trump's tariffs? Probably not. But could we face a recession and very difficult relations even with our closest allies? Certainly yes, but we'll see how things turn out and only then we'll know for sure. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you now know what tariffs are and what to expect from them. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.